I'm happy to virtually welcome you all to today's Ad Art Show 2020 Lunchtime POV from MVB Art. My name is Emily Anastasi from the MVB Art team, and it's my pleasure to introduce the next episode in a series hosted by Debbie Wells of Artful Circle titled Ad Art Show 2020 Winner Spotlight. Today featuring Jessica Alazraki, Ad Art Show 2020 winning artist. Welcome everyone, let's get started.
Hello, everyone. My name is Debbie Wells, and I, as Emily just said, am here with one of the winners of the Ad Art 2020 show. So welcome, Jessica. It's really glad to have you on this show.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, first, before we get to know more about your artwork and your life as an artist, let's just get to know you a little bit. So now I know you're now living in Manhattan with your family. So tell us about your origins, what country you're from and how you got to the United States.
Yes, I'm originally from Mexico City. I grew up there and I moved to New York City when I got married in 1998. So I've been in New York City since then.
And tell us about your graphic design career when you were in Mexico City and then when you transitioned to New York in the Big Apple. How was it the same? How was it different? What is it like in the professional art world in both places?
I used to work in advertising in Mexico City as a copywriter. Then I moved to New York and I started continue with my career in advertising, also as a copywriter, but I was target the US Hispanic market, so everything was in Spanish. And I always felt I like art direction better and I really wanted to be an art director. So I started taking classes after work at Parsons and SBA. And it was a smooth transition because in advertising you do a little bit of both. So I really knew, the visual side of it. And I became an art director and worked like that for many years.
So later, as you got comfortable in the advertising world in New York City, I think that your next step was to break into the fine art world. And what made you decide to do that? Because the reason I'm asking is because that's very common in everyone in the ad art show, is that like a lot of famous people such as Andy Warhol, people like that, they were successful in one field and then they tried to break into the fine art world. So tell us about how you did that.
Yeah, well, for me, I quit my job in advertising when I had my first daughter. I started freelancing and I really had the need to be very creative, like I missed that. So I find drawing classes, and it was accidentally because it was the only class that it wasn't homework based, it was work in the class. So that worked in my schedule with babies, and I immediately fell in love with drawing. Like I find myself, and I really, really knew I wanted to be a fine artist.
And how the fact that you're from Mexico, how does that influence your artwork while you're here? Do you reminisce about your life there and about the culture?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked that question because now that I look back, I think the fact that I work for the US Hispanic market had a lot of influence on the kind of art I'm doing right now, because I study the market from a commercial perspective, but I immediately identify as a Latino in the US and the feeling as an immigrant. And I was like paid to make the ads look Mexican. That was my job. So I immediately tried to push that and find a way to translate the colors and the brightness and all of the warmth of the culture in a visual way. And that became embedded in me in a way. So with my work right now, I think that influenced me a lot.
And that is interesting because you were basically doing it for pay,
exactly.
to figure out how to attract that demographic. But then when you had your opportunity to be a fine artist and you were able to express yourself with no restrictions, you felt like you were gravitating towards the same type of style.
Yes, it was like unconscious. Um, I was very attractive with the arts craft and the whole, vibrant look and warmth.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell us a little bit more about your color palette and the materials that you use, acrylic, oil. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I went to school to the New York Academy of Art, and I studied drawing with live models, and I studied painting with oil. I always used oil, and that really helped me to capture the portrait. And when I start my self-directed work, I start working with photographic references, and I wanted to paint Latino people, Mexican immigrants, and now I'm really excited with color. Like, that's what I really want to work on and push that as much as I can to make it very vibrant.
So I'm curious to know about what about anatomy and life drawing really attracted you, because that is one of the basis of what fine artists do. I know for myself, because I've been studying art pretty much my whole life. The first one of the first things you do when you really want to become serious is take life drawing classes. And how did you feel about that?
I was fascinated by painting a live model. It's a really pleasant experience. Like, painting the flesh is really exciting as a painter. And having the luxury to have a live model is really helpful and inspiring.
When you paint your own images, do you use models or are you doing them out of your imagination?
Yeah, I do not use models. I use photographic references.
Mhm.
My intention is that my work is completely made up. I'm not copying anything, but I do need the reference. So what I do is I collage out of different photographs to create my own. I don't use live models anymore.
So now, one of the projects that I was very interested in was when you do interior scenes. I want to hear why you do interior scenes and why you do seated people, and then we'll morph into your, I think, a fascinating project, your tablecloth project. But let's talk about why you like doing interiors and see what's the significance of seated people in your work.
Yes. Well, right now with the pandemic, I think is very people can relate to an interior scene, especially that I'm focusing on family values and kids. So interiors makes a lot of sense in that context. I think the tables for me are really important because it talks a lot about our culture, because it's a way to bring a celebratory feeling, also sharing, having kids and families, and it's also something I personally miss because back in our culture, when I was in Mexico, I had these family reunions that I miss very much. So it is important to me to bring that subject for many reasons. Also, Mexican food or Latino food is really important. So it's also a way to integrate that. So, like in a table, I can talk about all these subjects all at once. Also, I think it lends itself to a very interesting composition.
I think that's really interesting, and it's funny that you bring up the fact that interiors are very attractive right now because, as you said, because of the COVID-19 virus, we're all stuck at home. But maybe we shouldn't look at it as being as stuck and think about it as a time that we can really relate to our family. And you're right, have a spirit in the household that is very, it's not just something from Mexican culture, it's American culture, it's everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. I'm Jewish too, and I think the Jewish culture also It's very important to sit in a table. It's also something personal, like it's nice to see a specific place, and I think interiors are like personal. So it brings the viewer closer to the narrative that way.
So between your warm compositions and the vibrant colors, you really present, you can see your emotion coming out in the message of your fine art. And when you're expressing yourself in that way, would you agree that that really is a different way of thinking, even than commercial, even though you've sort of meshed them together?
Of course, yeah, it's very different. Before I used to sell products and I did that for a living, but it wasn't me, it was a brand. And now it really comes from my heart. I always tell my kids, like, I'm trying to sell emotion, and that is like so hard to do. Very different than selling a product or a service.
I agree with you. I think that's very a very introspective way of looking at why you do your art. You know, when you're doing it commercially and when you're doing it for yourself or to sell it, you know, to others. Okay, so now getting up to the big thing. Tell us about the tablecloth project, because I think it's was very innovative of you.
Thank you. Yeah, I found this tablecloth once I went to Mexico, and I was very attractive in general to arts and crafts. But I felt this plastic tablecloth, the pattern is really interesting, is decorative, but really pushing it to be a little quiche or over the top, and the colors are really bright. So it was like something really inspiring for me, and I decided I wanted to paint on top of them. That way I create an object of art instead of a traditional canvas, stretch canvas. And I needed to find the way to work on them technically, so I find a sealer and I paint on top, and I finish it with a border of color that is sewed to the tablecloth. So I was really excited with that idea. Also, to convey the subject of tables and interiors, it lets itself very organically.
No, I thought that was so clever, and I love the look of it. And I'm sure it took a lot of experimentation to make sure that the paint stuck properly to
Yeah,
it. And you
it
know,
was hard. Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure you did. And it's also very interesting. I've noticed that other artists have been doing this more so than ever before. You basically upcycled. Upcycled meaning that um, you took scraps of something or something that's already used for something else, and you repurposed it to be artwork. And I think that's something that's very hot right now.
Exactly. I'm using the material as a metaphor.
Yes, yes, that's right, because the tablecloth is what brings people together. It's all interrelated with your interior concept.
Yeah.
Yes, really interesting. So, okay, so now,
What I'm doing right now is I'm scanning the tablecloth and print it into Canvas, so that way it's archival.
oh, that's
So
wonderful.
I'm trying to find different ways of doing it.
Well, that's very smart because, you know, as people, hopefully people listening to this are Googling you right now and going on to Artsy and seeing your work, which I strongly encourage everyone to do. And they'll see that it's just a great series, and it really brings a lot of warmth and you know, happiness really to your walls. So now tell me, beside now you're not working in commercial art anymore, but you are working on your fine art. How else do you support yourself and your family with your art?
Well, that's a really tough question. I'm trying my best. I'm teaching kids or adults drawing, and it's fascinating because it's a way of inspiring others, and also the fact that you need to explain things helps you to understand the basic concepts and have it more handy in your mind in a way. Like I break all the rules that I teach, but and I'm not organized the way I was taught. but it's good to know what's the theory behind it, and it's really nice to see the kids doing it. It's really inspiring and
Well,
gratifying.
sounds like you have that community collaborative feeling just through your artwork, but also in your teaching methods, because it sounds like you're learning along with your students. So that's a wonderful way to be, because that's what it's all about. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, yes.
So now, I'm not sure if you realized, but behind you there were a few people scurrying about. So now you have two children, correct?
Yes, I have two kids. They are teenagers and they are making noise.
Are either of them interested in the arts?
My son is an artist, but he's not a visual artist necessarily. I think he wants to pursue acting and dance, but he definitely has, the DNA of an artist. And my daughter is more of an academic, but she's extremely talented. Like she draws amazing. So they both very talented in different ways.
And I'm sure they get a lot of inspiration from the work that while they watch you work.
Thank you. Gabriel.
So the next question I wanted to ask you was how you got involved with MVVO and the Ad Art Show, because this show really attracted people from all over the world. For example, the last person I interviewed before you was from Finland. So it's been a very interesting mixture of people. So how did you hear about it?
I participated last year too, and I was extremely excited to see my work at the Oculus and the LinkedIn across New York City, and I immediately apply again this year. I wasn't expecting to be a winner. I'm extremely honored and grateful and happy to be here and impressed with the other artists because the talent that there is in the show is incredible. So I'm happy to be one of them.
That's wonderful. And what was I going to say? Okay, so you're one of the winners now, and your work is now. If people are interested in it, they can go in Artsy to purchase it.
Yes.
But now I know it's on view at the Oculus, but with the pandemic, have you been to the Oculus to see your big version?
Yes, I went with the kids and it was really excited. It wasn't the same amount of traffic that it was last year, but it's still open and it's still really big. So it's not crowded or it doesn't feel dangerous. It feels very open and
That's
it's really
wonderful.
exciting to see it.
The Oculus is really an amazing place. And I really think that Maria was way ahead of her time when she realized that showing artwork in that kind of venue was so such great foresight to think that. And now people can buy art and look at art online more than ever before. I think the pandemic sort of pushed that along a little faster than maybe
Yeah.
we were ready for. Do you find that people do buy artwork online? Like, how do you feel about looking at artwork online as opposed to in person?
Yeah, well, it's always different to see it in person. Like, there is a very particular aspect of looking at art, like the texture doesn't translate in the same way. So it's nice to get used to seeing it live, but you can reach more online. And I think it's really great that we have that platform to show our work as artists and constantly post things, even work in progress and finalize. So I'm grateful for the social media and the internet that you can show work that way.
I totally agree. And now not only are people seeing your work, but now through interviews like this, we're getting to know what a lovely person you are as
Thank,
well.
thank you so
Um, okay, so just to end our interview, what plans do you have next now that you've reached the ultimate of being at the Oculus? What is your, and a winner, what are your plans for the future?
I'm very exciting because I'm planning my solo show. It's gonna be in November, at the beginning of November, in Jamaica Center for Arts and Learning here in Queens.
Oh,
And
great.
I won the grant, the Queens Art Fund. So it's with that grant that I'm painting for the show. And it's gonna be more online than in person. It's by appointment only, but I'm gonna try to sell it online as much as I can. So I'm really excited.
That's very exciting. Well, congratulations. I think you are doing fantastic. And I think that, you know, the fact that you started in the commercial world, then refound your love for drawing and were able to balance family and art together is quite an accomplishment. And I wish you a lot of luck in the future, and I hope to keep in touch.
Same. Thank you so much. I'm really appreciate. Thank you.
My pleasure. All right, goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Debbie, for a wonderful conversation. On the screen now, you'll see some of Jessica's artwork that's available for purchase on her Artsy page at artsy.net/artist/Jessica Alizraki/works for sale. Make sure you go check it out.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All POV interviews are available for viewing on mvvart.com and on MVVart's YouTube channel. Make sure you join us tomorrow for the first episode in a series hosted by Bennett D. Bennett, principal of Aerialist and co-founder of 600 and Rising, titled Don't Silence Our Voices, featuring Fearless Negro, Ad Art Show 2020 artist, Maria Van Vlodrop, founder and CEO of MVVU Art, and Isaac Aiden, chief curator of MVVU Art. Make sure if you have a chance, go to the Oculus and see the Ad Art Show 2020 come to life on the screens. Make sure you stop by Eataly for a free coffee and dessert, and make sure you go check out our fundraiser on Custom Ink and buy a commemorative branded t-shirt to support City Harvest during Hunger Action Month. Thank you all, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.